County Political Committee and the San Diego Chapter Political Committee to join us for tonight's presentation. So not everybody would necessarily know everybody here. And the only item on the agenda for tonight is the presentation and the opportunity to ask some questions of our two representatives from the Citizens Redistricting Commission. And I will be reading a bio for each of them before we get started. But before jumping into that part, let's go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Harold Standifer, and I'm chair of the Coaster Political Committee, and I'm currently sitting here in Encinitas. And let's see, I think, Alan, you're to my immediate left, so please introduce yourself.
Sure, thank you, Harold. My name's Alan Gerassi, and I'm with the North County Sierra Club, and I am an attorney by trade. I practice in San Marcos and live in San Marcos, right near Cal State San Marcos. And I've run for political office before. I'm very interested in seeing the process of redistricting.
Oh, thank you. And I think next we have Sally.
Hi, I'm Sally Prendergast, and I am chair of the Sierra Club North County Coastal Group. And then I also as well on the political, which I must say Harold's done a great job being chair of that group.
Well, thank you. And I'd say you do more than help out, Sally. Okay, Barbara, looks like you're next.
I'm Barbara Collins. I'm in Oceanside. I co-chair the Oceanside team for the Sierra Club, and I joined the political committee in 2018. And so I've had a couple of rounds of this, and I have to agree with Sally about how well led it is with Harold, and of course previously with Carol. And I'm very interested in tonight's presentation.
Okay, thank you. Paige? You're on mute, Paige.
Sorry.
There you are.
I'm with the Sierra Club group in Carlsbad. And let's see, we've been working for over 6 years now on community choice energy and switching to, building electrification and other things recently.
Okay, thank you. Susie?
Hi, I'm Susie Sherrod, and this is I started working with the political committee of Sierra Club Coaster chapter just last year, so I'm kind of new to all of this, and I'm very interested in redistricting and learning more. And I also serve as a planning commissioner in Encinitas.
Okay, Cynthia?
Hello, I'm Cynthia Wooten, and I'm on the Sierra Club Conservation Committee, and I'm the conservation representative on the Sierra Club San Diego Political Committee.
Thank you. Ann?
Hi, Ann Feeney. I live in Del Mar, and I'm on the Coasters Political Endorsement Committee.
Okay, and Jim?
Hi, I'm Jim. So I've been working on the PEC for a few years now, and I agree with what everyone said, that Harold has done an admirable job leading the group.
Well, I'm blushing. Thank you. Okay, and now it's my pleasure to introduce our two guests this evening. We have two members of the Citizens Redistricting Commission for the state of California with us tonight, and they're going to be making a presentation on the redistricting process. And I want to leave a little time at the end to ask any questions that we may have, and I'm going to ask you to put your questions into the chat, and then I can read them out at the end of when they conclude their presentation. And I know they have a PowerPoint that they'll be going over with us. I know that they're going to say this, but I'm going to say it as well. I had the opportunity to listen to actually a couple of commission meetings to just kind of get a taste for what's going on there. And one of the rules for tonight is that they are not able to take any input on redistricting. So if you have a burning opinion that you want to share about where a line should be drawn or what city should be in what district, tonight is not the night to do that. There will be an opportunity down the road when hearings are held where that's an appropriate time to do that. But I'm certain that questions about the specifics of how redistricting is done and what factors go into it, and I'm sure we'll all have questions about the census and what's up with that, all having part of the role to play in the redistricting process. Well, the first person I'm going to introduce is Isra Ahmad, and Isra is currently a senior research and evaluation specialist with Santa Clara County's Division of Equity and Social Justice. In this role, she leads the intersectional research efforts across 7 different offices within the division. Offices of Women's Policy, Immigrant Relations, Cultural Competency, Labor Standards Enforcement, LGBTQ Affairs, 2020 Census, and Gender-Based Violence Prevention. Now, previously, she served as the lead evaluator for the county's tobacco control program. She's worked for over 9 years in community organizing, research, and policy to address the inequities related to adverse health impacts from tobacco products. Here. In a variety of places, including the California Youth Advocacy Network, the Stanford Prevention Research Center, Tobacco-related Diseases Research Program at the University of California Office of the President, the Truth Initiative, and her academic alma maters. She earned an AA degree from De Anza Community College, and I know where that is, and a Bachelor of Science degree in Health Science from San Jose State University, one of my alma maters, and a master's degree from the University of California at Berkeley. Now, after all that, she does have some free time, and it says here that she enjoys hiking and spending time with family and friends. And she is registered to vote as a no party preference and lives in the city of San Jose, where I spent 7 very happy years way back in my youth. So I know the area well. So welcome. Patricia Sinay. Now, did I say the last name correctly?
Sinay.
Sinay. My apologies.
No need to apologize.
Patricia comes to us with nearly 30 years of community building experience. She launched a company called Community Investment Strategies, a consulting firm she founded that connects nonprofits, corporations, government agencies, and foundations' passions to action. Her experience includes working with civil society organizations and community leaders from the United States, Latin America, North America, Middle East, Africa, and Central Europe. Her clients include corporations, grant makers, associations, and nonprofits. For more than 12 years, she lectured on public service at UCSD and served as Holland America Lines corporate giving representative in San Diego. And this is where I know her name from. She served on the Encinitas Union School District School Board and currently is a commissioner on the Citizens Redistricting Commission. Now, before consulting, Patricia launched her career working with various international development and human rights organizations in Washington, D.C. She started her philanthropic career at San Francisco Foundation and later moved to San Diego, where she served as the executive team of the San Diego Foundation. She is a founding member of Women Give San Diego and Latina Giving Circle of San Diego. As the German Marshall Fund Transatlantic Community Foundation Fellow in 2004, she worked with Slovakia's community foundations. She was named to San Diego's Metropolitan Magazine's 2003 40 Under 40 And in 2015, she was one of 24 Latinas in California to participate in the Hispanic Hispanias Organized for Political Equity, which is HOPE, Leadership Development Institute, and a finalist for the San Diego Union Tribune's Latino Champions. And most recently, she was selected by the Association of Fundraising Professionals as San Diego's 2020 Volunteer of the Year. Patricia was born in Mexico to a Peruvian mother and Argentine father. She earned a MA in International Affairs from American University and her bachelor's degree in political science with an emphasis on international relations is from UCLA. Most importantly, she is a wife as well as a mother of 2 wonderful and generous children. And welcome, Patricia. So a little bit about our group. We are, as I've said, all members of 3 different political committees within San Diego County and Imperial County chapter of the Sierra Club. And mostly we work on the review and endorsement of candidates for local office, all the way up to state level office. And occasionally we get involved in even congressional races to make endorsements for candidates whose views are run or is supportive views in positions taken by the Sierra Club. So that represents the bulk of our work. And we may also take positions on various initiatives that come up as well, from the local level all the way on up to the state level, if they have a bearing on the mission of the Sierra Club. So with that, I will turn the floor over to both of you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Harold, for that warm welcome. And I feel like it's appropriate to say go Spartans at this point. Patricia, would you be able to pull up the slides? Yeah. Awesome.
Getting there. Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing. I'm going to ask everybody to put themselves on mute.
All righty. You see it all? Israel, can you see them?
No.
No. Huh. All righty.
Harold, did you share?
Oh, yeah. You probably, I wonder if you need a share.
There we go.
Oh, now you can see them? Okay. Great. All right.
Yes. All right. First, thank you, Harold, and to the Sierra Club for inviting us. We are really excited to be here. Earlier this evening, I told my dad I was going to San Diego, and he responded with, what airline? And I told him Zoom Airlines, because that is our world right now. I'm looking forward to the day that coronavirus is behind us and I can actually come down to this beautiful part of the state and visit you all in person. Before we begin, next slide, Patricia. Just a quick reminder, Harold has already alluded to this, but we are not allowed to take public input at this time. And this is because of Government Code Section 8253, and that strictly forbids commissioners and staff from taking public input outside of a regularly scheduled commission meeting. Patricia, the slides are no longer visible.
Yeah, no, I was having issues.
Oh, no worries. No worries. However, we do have our newly launched website, WeDrawTheLinesCA.org. And if you have input to give, that would be the most appropriate place at this time to give your input. Next slide. So what is redistricting? The commission, we are trying really hard to make redistricting appealing and exciting, but it has been rather challenging. And redistricting is the process in which we draw and redraw new boundaries that determine which Californians are represented by each elected official. And our commission is charged with California state level redistricting, and we'll go into the details of that in a bit. Next slide. So why do we even go through this process? well, there's a lot of changes that happen within our state in terms of population. So communities change, people are born, people die, people move, different communities grow and shrink. And areas where there were once roughly the same number of people become unequal. And that actually ties back to federal regulation that we have to consider when it comes to redistricting as well. A lot of things happened in California over the past year. So it's a really unfortunate but easy example to draw of why redrawing our district maps are so critical and important. As you all know, COVID-19 has presented a slew of problems within our communities, but also we had the California wildfires that spanned from north all the way to the south, and that displaced a lot of populations as well. So all of those changes need to be reflected in our district maps. Next slide. So your voice. This is perhaps one of the most critical parts of redistricting, and that is the voice of the people. And one of the greatest powers that the people of California have is to elect their own representatives to conduct the businesses of their government, of our government. How the district boundaries are configured can make a difference between empowering and maximizing the voter's voice or minimizing and muting those voices. In most other states, politicians redraw these district lines and often end up drawing safe districts for themselves to allow them to stay in office. However, in California, we have put this on the commission effectively to the people of California to decide. And the history of redistricting. So redistricting has been used at times to exclude communities from political power. And this is by fully participating in or monitoring the upcoming redistricting process. More communities may have the opportunity to actually elect candidates of their choice. And speaking up about your community is absolutely critical to help your community be represented as best as possible. This ensures that your voice is heard by your elected leaders when making decisions ranging from quality and funding of your child's education, or even determining your tax rates, right? So your input is valuable in shaping the new political boundaries. And without the input of Californians, we would have a tremendously difficult job ahead of us. So we rely on the voice of the people for this process. Next slide. So how does redistricting affect you? So we thought it would be beneficial for us to break down how redistricting affects an individual person directly. So this slide shows 4 different buckets. Of course, this is not exhaustive, but we just wanted to provide some examples. The first being power to the people. The Voters First Act was historic in California. It transferred the power of drawing the district maps away from politicians and gave it to the people directly. Championing your issues. So having the opportunity to elect representatives that champion your issues is important in the state, across the whole state, where issues can vary drastically from one area to the next, right? And so, for example, Northern California might champion environmental or economic issues, while Central California might champion water or agricultural issues. And Southern California might champion issues dealing with transportation or housing or employment. I know for my area, housing is a huge thing. We're paying rent through the roof, and I personally would want to be able to elect someone who would represent that issue. The next bucket, funding priorities. So tied to the issue of electing representatives that champion your specific issues in your community, you might want to elect representatives that have your financial interests at heart as well. When the time comes to build a budget, You want a representative fighting to ensure your community gets the financial resources it deserves for various services, such as education, water, and fire protection. And with COVID-19 taking over, this issue has become more and more prevalent. The fourth bucket area listed here on the slide is community boundaries. So the redistricting process is all about drawing lines and determining which communities get grouped into districts. Your input in this process is essential to helping us, the commissioners, understand where your community starts and where your community ends. Redistricting in California is one of the few civic activities that any Californian can provide input to regarding their community that ultimately will impact the laws and regulations, tax structure, how funding is distributed, and which services are provided in your community. Next slide.
Got it.
And I will pass it on to Patricia.
Great, thank you, Isra. So the road to fair representation is really, we need 3 pieces of data to be able to create the maps that we finally give to the governor. Every 10 years, as you know, we have the census. So in 2020, we completed the census. And so every 10 years we complete the census. And then from there, we wait to get the reapportionment numbers from the President of the United States. So we will be told how many congressional districts we will have. The congressional districts, currently we have 53, but we will see, give or take, what happens after they count the census. After that, we'll get the census data. And as Isra said, it's really, really important for us to make sure that we have the individual voices of the community. So we call it the community of interest. So the 3 parts are the census data, the reapportionment numbers, and the community of interest information. And then from there, we put it all together to create the fair representation, the maps. Historically, legislature, Isra's spoken about this, but we bring it up often because some people don't realize that the way it was done in the past was that the legislature made the decisions of who they would be representing. And with the redistricting, with an independent redistricting commission, which was voted on by the voters voted for us, we are now the people select. So, sorry, I'm trying to do several things at once. There we go. So why independent redistricting matters. So let me just ask you this. How many of you know what gerrymandering is? Go ahead and raise your hands. I can see you. So we've all heard about gerrymandering, and we've all seen funny looking congressional districts and all sorts of different districts. And so this picture right here is a representation of, you've got 50 people, 60% are orange and 40% are purple. And how can you put them into 5 different groupings or districts? There's different ways that you could, these are all 4 different ways that you can do it. 2 of them are fair and 2 of them are not fair. The two that's under the fair are fair, but the idea is that 2 of the far right are gerrymandering. They, yes, they can look pretty and or not, but they don't represent the 60 and 40%. And this will be important to remember when we go back into talking about the different criteria that we need to do as we're moving through. Alrighty. So, see, I jumped ahead. So we have 6 criteria that we need to follow, and in this order. Everybody in the United States needs to have equal populations for their districts. And we can't figure out the equal population for the districts until we know how many congressional districts we have and how many people we have, and then we can figure out that aspect of it. Then we need to comply with the Voter Rights Act and ensure that minorities have a fair opportunity to elect representatives of their choice. The third point is districts must be drawn contiguously so that all parts of the districts connect to each other. And in the past with redistricting, they didn't necessarily touch, so it was kind of interesting. Districts must minimize the division of cities, counties, neighborhoods, and communities of interest to the extent possible. Fifth, districts should be geographically compact. Now, this requirement refers to density, not shape. So sometimes people say, wait, but it goes all over the place. It's not a square. That's okay. And finally, where it's practical, each Senate district should be comprised of 2 complete and adjacent assembly districts. And then the Board of Equalization should be 10 Senate districts. Now, what's important when you're looking at this is it's 1 through 6, and we have to follow it in this order. So it's sometimes, you know, as we're moving down the criteria, it's harder to reach them. In addition, we can't know the place of residency of the incumbent or a political candidate, so we don't take that into account. And we may not draw lines to favor or discriminate against an incumbent, a political candidate, or political party. Wait, I've got 2 mouses going. All right, so there are different redistricting efforts. In San Diego County, we've got the counties having their redistricting efforts. The city of San Diego, Chula Vista, you know, some cities have independent commissions and others don't. You've got school districts, including community college districts, and then you may have water districts and others. This can get really, really confusing. And we are talking with the different redistricting efforts just to see if there's how can we share outreach efforts, how do we share information, and you know, how do we differentiate the different communities of interest. But it should be an exciting time for people like you who like to be politically active. You've got a lot of opportunities to voice your opinions. So the history. Do you all remember voting for the Voter First Act when this first came on? Yeah, so it was in, so originally it was just for state legislature and the equalization boards. And then in Prop 11 came around in Prop 20 in 2010, we added the congressional districts. We were the first redistricting commission in the state, and the first one was in 2010. And we now, Isra and I, sit on the second redistricting commission. There are others within others that have independent commissions, including Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Michigan, Montana, and Washington. And there's a lot of attention on a lot of these because this is their first time doing the redistricting effort. So how we were selected. This process probably was a lot more than what Isra and I ever expected. So it started off where just a quick little questionnaire that said, are you interested? And 20,000 applicants in the state of California said, yes, this sounds interesting. And then from there, they invited a good number of those folks. They did vet it. And those who were eligible, they sent us what they called a supplemental application, but honestly, it was the application. I like to refer to it as a grad school application because it had 5 essays, 3 letters of recommendation, and all sorts of financial information. That application there was 2,000 people who applied. It was screened in different ways. And then 120 were invited to the interview process. Throughout this time, there was always equal amount of Democrats, Republicans, and other party or decline. And then the applicant pool of 60 was sent to the legislature, and they each got to strike 12 from each party. And finally, we had a lottery that looked a lottery. It was a lottery. It was a ping pong ball lottery, like a bingo lottery, where they picked the first 8, and Israel was picked within those first 8. And then those first 8 picked the final 6. And this is who it ended up being. So we have 6, not 6. We have a 14-member commission made up of 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 4 members not affiliated with either of those 2 parties. It is the most diverse group of people I've ever worked with. We reflect the different, different parts of the state, as well as have diverse professional and lived experiences. And you should, we have 8 women, as you can tell, and 6 men, and our ages range from in our 30s to our 60s. And you can join us at any one of our commission meetings. We have one tomorrow. And you just go onto our website. They're all virtual. So that is one of the most unique things about this experience is Israel and I have not been in the same county as of yet, let alone the same room. So all of us have met just the way we're meeting right now through Zoom. And we're getting to build relationships and trust and the commission and everything else that way. And then our commission duties include community outreach, which is what we consider these. So education and community outreach, and then public input. We'll have pre-census and post-census input meetings. And then we will be drawing the maps. Now, we will draft the final maps for Congress, which, as I said, is an estimated 53 congressional districts. We'll have 40 state Senate districts, 80 assembly districts, and 4 Board of Equalization districts. Now, as you know, this map down at the bottom is a map for Sacramento for each of those districts that we're drawing. So in one area, there will be 4 different maps, and so it'll look and feel a little different each time. So how do 14 people really get to know the whole state? We decided to break down the state into different zones, and these are our zones. Israel and I are at the bottom, at the border. So we have San Diego and Imperial County. One of my other zones is B, so way up at the top. So I like to say I have the two borders of California, and Israel has Los Angeles with another team member, and we are going out talking to community members, organizations, government entities, and really trying to find as many places where we can tell our story and encourage people to participate. And I believe you're on, Israel.
Thanks, Patricia. So I will now jump into communities of interest. And Patricia alluded to this a little bit earlier in terms of how we are taking into consideration the diversity of California in these maps, right? So when drawing maps, we have to be mindful of communities of interest. We can obtain the city and county information, but we need the communities of interest information from Californians directly. So communities of interest are defined as a concentrated population which shares common social and economic interests that should be included within one district. For example, I brought up earlier the example of rent prices in the Bay Area. A community of interest example would be people who are similarly in a situation where they are renters and they would want to get together and ensure that they have someone who represents that specific issue. So other examples include areas in which people share similar cultures, same transportation facilities, have similar work opportunities, or even have access to the same media. And people can belong to multiple communities of interest. It doesn't have to be just one. And also keeping in mind that a community of interest is not the same as a district, but community of interest are key building blocks for that district. And some ways to describe your community would be geographic. So if you share waterways, if you consider yourself living in a rural area or an urban area, or if you have a mountain range in your community that impacts you personally in whichever way you define that to be. Another way is boundaries. So you can think of city boundaries or town boundaries, counties, school areas, or just other things that you have in common with the people around you. Next slide. So participating in the process, and this is where things get really exciting. The commission is eager to get your feedback, your thoughts, your experiences, and really learn from everyone about where your community is. So your input is vital to the success of the commission. And we've identified the different ways that you can participate in these 3 simple steps. So the first step would be to describe your community. The second step would be to draw your community on a map. And the third step would be to actually send that information directly to the commission. As we said earlier, this particular meeting, we can't take that information from you all. However, we will provide you plenty of resources and information on how to contact us and send us that information. Next slide. So this is actually one of the ways to do that. The statewide database out of UC Berkeley developed a COI tool, we're calling it, Communities of Interest tool. It can be found on drawmycacommunity.org. We also have it linked through our website. This tool is very similar to a Google Maps type tool. So you can actually go in and you can include text of where your community is, however you define it, and you can actually draw your community of interest through this tool and click submit, and it will automatically get to us at the commission through the formal means. If you prefer to send an email, you can also do that as well with your description of your community. Or you can also send by snail mail as well to our offices in Sacramento. Next slide. So this is where things are constantly changing. California Supreme Court ruled last year, this is the legislature of California versus Alex Padilla, that in the case census data is delayed, the commission would have additional time to submit these final maps. Our original deadline was August 15th, 2021. And I'm comfortable now using the term was because the US Census Bureau on February 12th announced that they would deliver redistricting data to the states by September 30th, 2021. So almost a month and a half after our deadline. So this changed things quite a bit. And California is unique in that we allocate the population of people who are incarcerated by their last known address and not where they are incarcerated for the purposes of redistricting. So that correction in the census data will take an estimated month or so That correction is also done by the statewide database out of UC Berkeley. So that is putting us at estimating Halloween to get our data, when originally our deadline was supposed to be August 15th. So there's quite a bit of delay in even receiving the data that we need in order to complete our task, let alone the process that is tied to post-census data receiving or receipt of post-census data. So the Supreme Court ruled that we would have until December 15th, 2021, based on the number of days delayed from the original census delivery date. I myself am still very unclear as to how this timeline shifts. Are they counting, one day at a time? Like there's a 10-day delay. This means you have 10 additional days after August 15th. That part to me is personally unclear at this point. Yet, however, we are following guidance from council on how to make sure that we are within the bounds of the law to deliver these maps to the Secretary of State. And this ties into our timeline. This is our rough timeline. The previous presentation we gave, it changed literally 2 hours before we had the slides up. So this is our timeline as of today, February 23rd. It might change. So right now we are in the phase of giving educational presentations, really trying to connect with Californians to let everyone know that this process is going on. I personally didn't participate in the 2010 redistricting process. I was by age not even eligible to vote for the initiative on the ballot. So this time around, I am learning so much more and really excited to engage our fellow Californians in this process, which will hopefully bring you all back in the June to October range, in which we would actually ask folks to give their public input at those meetings. Along with that, you are more than welcome to submit your comments through the means mentioned on the slide earlier, but we will be hosting these meetings in which folks can come in and give their public testimony that way. Again, so September 30th is when we are expecting census data to be delivered to the state of California. We, the commission, are expecting around roughly Halloween to receive that data. November to December timeframe to actually hold these public input meetings post census data collection and actually commence the line drawing. And then December, we hope that we will have a draft map up for display. And this is also required, in which we would have a draft map up and we won't touch it for, Patricia, correct me, 2 weeks, I believe, longer.
I think we still get to have to decide that.
Okay.
Last time
so
they didn't do that, and the community didn't appreciate that. So
got it. Okay, so we still have to figure out what that process will look like, but there will be a process in which Californians have a chance to react to these draft maps. Then we go back and make these edits, hoping to submit by the February 15th deadline if we are interpreting the Supreme Court ruling as it was stated. And those maps would go to the Secretary of State's office. I highly encourage everyone to watch our meetings sometimes, because as this timeline might change. Next slide. Again, this is another friendly reminder for our Q&A portion that will be following this talk, that if there are specific inputs about lines and where lines should be drawn, please visit our website and submit your comments that way. But otherwise, we are here to answer any questions about the general redistricting process. And here is our contact information. Marcy Kaplan on our team is helping us manage all of these educational meetings out in the community. So if you all have some specific questions, please direct them towards her. Otherwise, we are finally on social media. We have Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we have a YouTube channel as well. And that concludes our talk. I will hand it back to you, Harold.
Thank you very much. That was really, I learned a lot. I've been accused of being a bit of a redistricting junkie, but I learned quite a bit here. Thank you very much. I have taken some dives into the We Draw the Lines website, and there's a lot of information there, and a lot of different paths you can go through to ferret out information. The first thing I want to say before we do some questions is I want to commend both of you for volunteering to do this work. It is going to be arduous and particularly challenging this time around for you, given the timelines that you're going to be given to work with. I guess it's a good thing that the primary is not until June of next year. Otherwise, if it were in March, I don't know what would be happening. So again, thank you very much for doing that work and then coming to talk to us this evening. And you know, you've got a commission meeting tomorrow and you're giving up your evening tonight to do this. So thank you. We do have some questions in the chat. Some of them you've answered already. One of them was, how are commissioners selected? But you went over that pretty thoroughly. But I do have kind of a follow-up to that. You mentioned that there was an interview process when they were narrowing down the group from, you know, 20,000 to 2,000 to 120. Who conducts those interviews?
The whole process was conducted by the state auditor's office. So it was 3 individuals that read all 20,000 applications and got together, 1 Democrat, 1 Republican, and 1 independent. And they conducted the interviews. The interviews, some of them were in person, and then COVID struck, and they moved online, and they were an hour long. Wow.
So commendation to those folks too for going through that. You mentioned there was a part where a group of names went to the legislature. So, and then legislators could strike. Was that all of the legislators, all 120 of them?
That was just the leadership.
Okay.
So the leadership in the Senate, or no, the leadership of the parties, right, Isra?
The leadership of the Senate and the Assembly. So
Yeah.
it was the Democratic, in this case, the Democratic leaders, the majority and minority leaders in both houses in the state.
So like Tony Akins and Anthony Rendon and whoever leading the Republicans. Okay. Thank you. Let's see. I think you answered this one, but I'll repeat it anyway. The state districts are reapportioned at the same time as the congressional districts. So it's all in.
Well, the state districts, we don't change the number of districts for the Senate and state assembly. The only one that gets reapportioned is the congressional.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, here's a question. If there are conflicts in an area of interest or maybe a community of interest, how are they prioritized?
We don't know yet.
That is the $1 million question. We haven't, or go ahead, Patricia.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say at this point, it's quite easy because we haven't gotten any data yet. So there are no conflicts at this point for the commission to even consider. I think at that point, when we do get that information, the beautiful part about this process is everything is live streamed and public. So when we get this data and we're discussing it, it's open to everyone in a publicly noticed meeting. And it really allows for a community conversation about what these maps should look like. So if there's a conflict about a specific area within the 14 commissioners, there's public comment and there's like opportunity for other folks to chime in and say, hey, have you thought about it this way? Or have you thought about this potential solution? So I know I myself am really, really grateful for all the active participation we've gotten so far in this process, because it makes our jobs so much easier when communities can come and tell us like, hey, you're doing this wrong, do it this way. It's like, okay, that's a really good idea. We should probably think of alternate solutions.
Hey, a question occurs to me as a follow-up to that. I'm assuming that they kept good records from 10 years ago. You have access to that and you can go back and research that and have it give you sort of a basis or a foundation.
Yeah, we do say we're not the 2010 commission, but we are building on the foundation of the 2010 commission. The other thing that's very different is the fact that we have COVID and the pandemic and everything is virtual, which has a lot of negatives, but it also has a lot of positives for us. We think that we'll be able to engage more individuals because we won't be traveling as much, so we can have more meetings to get public interest. But on the flip side, we know that there's a lot of communities in the rural areas in the very north of the state that don't have internet access. So we're also trying to get incarcerated people to share their thoughts on community as well. And so we will be coming up with different tools besides just technology heavy options.
Okay. Question here on this meeting is being recorded, and I understand that you're actually recording all of the educational meetings that you hold. Are those recordings available to the public?
Yeah. We need to record them for the public so the public can make sure that we didn't talk about any lines. And so we can make sure that we can send you back the link so that you all can have it.
Oh, that would be terrific. Thank you. I've got a couple of questions in here in the chat room regarding wanting to share this out for people that couldn't make it to join us this evening. Okay, it seems like I've run through all the questions. Do I see a raised hand? I see a raised hand. Paige.
I'm always concerned that groups aren't technically or traditionally very well connected to the political process, that are underrepresented, don't have much of a voice in this. And yes, you kind of mentioned the incarcerated population, but how do you guarantee that you really are reaching out and connecting with all those, communities?
So I serve on the outreach and engagement subcommittee, which is a whole 2 people, because we can only have 2 people per subcommittee or we break rules. But we created the map that we showed you, the outreach map, with the whole intention of having teams of 2 going out there and going a little deeper. And some commissioners are more comfortable doing outreach than others. I'm kind of a outreach connection junkie. I love going out there and figuring out who's who. And Isra and I have been having a lot of fun doing it in Imperial and here in San Diego. But what we're also doing is connecting with statewide associations, if it's Unidos or the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, as well as the League of Women Voters and youth leadership programs, and connecting with the Farm Bureau Association, just connecting with them and having them help us get the message out to their members. So then when our commissioners reach out and then to them, they won't be like, who are you? Even though I've got to say, I have yet to have anyone who doesn't take my emails or is excited to be contacted by a commissioner. It's like, wait, you're a commissioner, you're not staff? And then we've been working a lot with nonprofits, different groups. There's a collaborative, a redistricting collaborative that's comprised of NALEO and the Black Hub and just a lot of different groups, and they watch our meetings and they call in, they send us letters. And then we're doing as many webinars as we can, and we'll be doing them in Spanish and have them recorded in Spanish and other languages. The COI tool is in 14 languages or 12 languages, 12 or 14 languages. So people can submit we're saying submit everything in whatever language you want and we'll figure it out. And we're really taking advantage of this extra time that has been given to us to really reach out. And I would say all 14 of us are very committed to getting out there.
Well, I want to thank you very much. The presentation was very informative.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Anybody have their hand up there? Looking for hands. This is their chance to ask these folks anything that may be on our mind. Okay, Susie, got your hand up?
Yeah, I did put it in the chat, but I know it's a little busy, the chat there. I was wondering, are these districts comprised of an identical number of persons? I mean, or if there is a community of interest that bridges it in such a way that maybe one district has more people because of that, how do you split them up? Are they going to be identical no matter what in terms of the number of people in each district, or might there not be, identical?
The Constitution says that we need to have the same number of, the US Constitution says that districts need to have the same number of people. I think it's plus or minus a certain number, so it's not exactly the same. But that is the #1 criteria from the US Constitution.
Thank you so much.
And every time you move a line, it moves everything.
Yeah.
So sometimes you think, oh, well, just move it over here a little, but it changes every little thing. And we are expecting to have at least one less congressional district. So that means it's not like it just disappears. Everything has to kind of move back into shape. And we don't start with the maps that we have now. We start with a clean slate. I think that's important for people to know.
That is really interesting. Wow, what a job.
Yeah, I think roughly for everybody's information, there's approximately 700,000 people per congressional district now, is my understanding. And of course, that number will go up by some factor because the state population increased somewhat, not as much as other states as have done, but so that number will go up by some small factor. Other questions?
Cynthia's raising her hand.
Cynthia, yes.
Yes. What about sometimes there are these large rural districts, let's say they have farming, and then they have people that are in total poverty, or you could have maybe Indian reservations. So they're very rural and they're very spread out. Yeah. How do you manage something like that? Because the farmers will have one set of interests, and then the people that are in total poverty, they'll have a whole different set of interests.
Israel, do you want to take it or you want me to take it? You want me to start and then you start? Okay. We're still figuring a lot of that out, but when it comes to, a district will be comprised of more than one community of interest. And one individual can be part of different communities of interest. So if you think about the community, your faith-based community, your environment community, your school districts, so you can be part of different communities of interest. So what gets interesting is not all farmers are the same. So just because someone is agriculture in the Central Valley doesn't mean that there's the same as an agricultural worker. I mean, agriculture that's on the Central Coast and things like that. So we're just going to have to really pay attention and listen. But you're right, some of these districts are very diverse and with tribal communities as well as rural poverty and agriculture. And yeah, we're actually looking forward to hearing and seeing and kind of playing with the messiness of it all.
So would you, for example, take, let's just say one area, I'm not going to say specifically because I know I'm not supposed to, but let's say one area has richer farmers and a poorer population-based subsistence population.
Yeah.
And would you take the subsistence people and lump them into another area so that it was, or would you keep them sort of in their whole geographic area, the different special interests together?
I think we're going to have to do it case by case. It's hard to talk about a hypothetical.
Okay, so those two approaches are possibilities.
Do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think this is the conversation that we all in California will be having, is how do we group together these different communities of interest? And I think what Patricia said like really hits home with me too, where it's like you belong to multiple communities of interest. Like I am glad to go protest rent prices any day of the week, but then I also am like, why is there so much traffic? Can we do something about transportation? Or, a myriad of other issues like, fair wage and whatnot. So I think it really will come down to public participation in this process to help us understand where these communities of interest are and which issues keep coming up in conversation. I think right now it's so difficult to say how we would do one thing or another, just because that information is not there. We don't have the data to base this conversation off of. But if we were in the future, Cynthia, I would really hope you call in and submit your public comment, because these are the types of conversations that we need so desperately.
Thank you.
Any other hands up? Yes, Sally.
Well, I had put this in the chat, but I'm trying to wrap my brain around, how many people you expect to participate. I mean, is it like overwhelming numbers that you're trying to manage, or are you really trying to go out and, pull these groups out? Because, there is like the squeaky wheels, which someone was alluding to, you're going to get certain groups that know how to make their voices heard and others can't. But I'm just curious how many people really are anticipated to participate.
So when I asked the former line drawer what our goal should be of engagement, our engagement goal, because some people wanted numbers, wanted to make it numbers. She said, if you got over 0.01% of the state of California, you would be doing really well. And that doesn't sound very much, but then when you figure out, what's 0.01% of 40 million, it's a lot of people. We hope to do better than that. And there's some maps will be submitted by a group. So it'll be, a group got together and submitted it, and others will be submitted individually. But we're open, we're creating a system because we're still building the plane as, right now. So Isra's on the subcommittee that's building the data management piece of it and data collection and all that. So we're hoping that everybody feels good. And you can submit more than one map because you might have more than one community of interest.
Yeah, and to add to that, from the data management side, we're building a system, a management system that can handle 40 million, because it would be my dream to wake up and see 40 million inputs in this data management system. But we are also aware that being an active participant in our democracy is a lot of work. Like first we ask you to take the census, and then we ask you to vote, and then we ask you to be aware of all these social issues, and then, oh, here comes redistricting, and then, oops, it's time to vote again. Like it's a lot of work, and we definitely understand that. So Patricia is really good at connecting with groups so that we can kind of like spider web out and connect with community leaders, trusted community leaders. In this example, Harold, who really did a great job of bringing all of you together. And now we have 11, 12 people, and you all have your networks that you all can share this information with and be like, hey, this is coming up. So, you know, the more people we can get to participate in this process, the more hope I have for democracy moving forward in California.
I feel like you need more commissioners. Your job seems completely overwhelming to me. I'm happy
Well,
you're doing, I'm glad I'm not.
just think of what it's like to have 14 diverse, smart people, opinionated, civically engaged people.
It's fun, right? It's fun.
It's a lot of fun, but I was just thinking, if we got more, it'd just be more. Our meetings are not short.
I bet.
No, they're not. I can attest to that. And they run for like 3 days.
I tell everybody, I thought that we would be meeting maybe 3 to 4 days a month. I didn't realize it would be 3 to 4 days a week.
Yeah.
Any more questions for our commissioners before we let them go?
I just had one. So with the census being delayed, and do you have you been given an ETA on when the data and when the census will be done and when we will be getting the data? And you'll be using that to draw the lines.
We are estimating Halloween. So October
That's when
31st of 2021. Yeah.
You'll be done by then?
No.
No. We'll
No.
get our data.
Oh,
Yeah, it got pushed
Yeah.
back quite a bit.
I'll say,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what pushes everything into February 2022.
Yeah, which is really close to, I guess, the old primary date, which was
Yeah, the old
supposed to be
primary date was
earlier.
March.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could basically say 4th of July is when a little bit after 4th of July, we'll be getting the reapportionment numbers, and then Halloween will have the census data that we're ready to use. Then Thanksgiving and New Year's will be when we'll be getting all the input from you all. And by Valentine's Day, we hope to give the maps to the governor. So yes, all our holidays are taken for the next year.
Yes.
And if I may add, Harold, just a brief insight into Patricia and our future after these maps. Something really important to note for everyone is as we signed up for this commission, we are barred for running for any elected office for 10 years. So until these maps are redrawn by the next commission, that's obviously to prevent any unfair elections. We are also barred from working for an elected official in a paid capacity for 5 years. So halfway through our commissionship, which I personally think is kind of weird, but we'll see how we can change that to 10 years. So that's just an insight into our own efforts on this process that, as someone who has seen government, play so many different roles in our lives, and especially in today's climate, I felt that it's really important to share our personal vested, interests in this process, and its divestment from political office.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good for another 100 years. Political office. If this is just the tip of the iceberg, I like my weekends.
And I'm happy to have served for 2 years, and that was enough for me.
Well, I thank both of you for that really great presentation tonight and answering all of our questions as well. And, you know, given that you've got a meeting tomorrow and the next day and the next day after that, I want to let you go with a round of applause,
Thank you.
virtual and actual, and have a really good evening. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and if I could ask the other folks to hang on